We are building the Fractals and Recursion project from the YByte Python curriculum available at www.ybyte.in. We saw previously how we could use recursion to create, let's say, this big pattern, lots of squares. Now, our next target is to create a tree pattern, different fractal. Now, like I said, at the first look, these two look very, very different. But from a logic perspective, in fact, there's a deep similarity, which we will, use in developing, let's say, the code to develop draw the tree. Let's understand this. Basically, in the square pattern, the broad picture that I follow is that I draw a big square and then I draw, let's say, two smaller squares, one on the right side, one on the left side. Now, if you want, you can think of these smaller squares as being the children of the big square. Now, this process doesn't stop, obviously. I take this big square and I draw two, let's say, its children. Its children and its children. Of course, at some point, I stop this. Now, turn your attention towards a tree. In fact, the process is not very different, except that instead of squares, I have just, let's say, one line, or think of it like a branch. So I start, let's say, from here. I now make two branches, one on the left side, one on the right side. For both of these, again, I make two branches, one on the left, one on the right, and I keep doing this. Of course, I must stop this in practice till a point where, the branches or say the squares become too small. So the point I'm trying to make is that, look, in here, we had a big, let's say, square with two children, one on the left, one on the right, going on and on. In here, we have one branch branching into two. So basically, again, for every branch, we have two children, one on the right, one on the left. So basically, these two are quite similar. In fact, if you think about it, the basic drawing task, for, let's say, the tree is actually simpler because, in case of square, we were drawing a square. Of course, you could draw the pattern with, let's say, any other polygon. That's perfectly fine. But, nonetheless, it was a fairly involved drawing task. But here it's just a simple line. However, there is a complication that the children line are always tilted compared to the original line. In fact, this gets quite tricky to handle and understand, but we will, do this a bit later. So what happens is that I start, let's say, with, a branch, then I branch out twice. So at certain angle, let's say A on both sides. So with the vertical, there's an angle of A. Further, I branch with A and so on and so forth. We will see how to handle this. Now, the interesting bit is that since the basic structure of the square pattern is really the same as the tree pattern, in fact, we should be able to generate the tree pattern also with two recursive calls, just like we did in the square pattern. Also remember that the first recursive call looks almost trivial, but the magic suddenly happens in the second recursive call. So a logical conclusion that we could come to is that, look, I need a function that can draw me a branch that can then, be recursively called to create these children. And the way I would go about it is that let's just worry about one side children, which is the right side children, which is kind of like, what we did here. One recursive call will look very mundane. I call the second one. If I got everything correct, in fact, it will do the job for me. It will look magical, but just like the transition happened from, let's say, this to, let's say, this intricate pattern, I will find that my tree is, in fact, also ready. So that's what we are going to do. We will get started with a single recursive call so that we can get the right side of the tree made, just like a branch. And this is exactly what we have been doing with the square pattern. We'll come back to this in the next video, but I hope you're following the thought process because that is the most important part of it. Once the thought process is clear, the code just naturally follows. In general, this is a very, very, very unique way of learning Python. Look at our website, www.ybyte.in. You'll find many, many, many such activities. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.